Yo, peace, brother. Peace, peace, peace. How are you doing, man?
Ngihlala mfowethu otherwise.
I'm good, my brother. I'm good. Yo, dude, it's been a while. It's been a minute. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to our returning subscribers, our loyal viewers, and to every new person, guys, feel free to subscribe, comment, share your thoughts, to like, and even share the video, so that we can get the conversation going. I think tonight we have a lot to talk about. We can talk about, there's this issue that's going on with Russia and the Russian president, Vladimir Putin, and the arrest warrant that was issued by the International Criminal Court, the ICC. But not just that, I think we can really start back, to look at Brics, the Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa alliance, and how it's starting to gain, a lot of attention in the worldwide audience. A lot of countries expressing an interest that they want to join BRICS to form a BRICS Plus. I know specifically here in Africa that Nigeria has been mentioned as one of the countries that are potentially going to join. I've also heard that there's a Caribbean country such as Jamaica that has been mentioned as one of the countries that might join BRICS Plus. I do know that the USA neighbor, Mexico, has been dubbed as one of the potential BRICS Plus members as well. But I also hear that Iran or Iraq, one of the two, I know it's not the same country. I'm sorry that I'm mentioning both of them. But I hear that I think it's Iraq, it might join BRICS Plus. So this is a lot of people that are going to join, a lot of countries, a lot of money, a lot of dollars that are no longer going to have a place in the world. But how about we go a step back? How about we take it back to the days where, Africa was fighting for its independence. Africa was on the decolonization agenda, and how Russia and China played an important role in that aspect. Looking at the relationship between Russia and China and Africa, and how far back it goes. But not just that, but I think also looking and comparing that relationship with the relationship between Africa and Europe, including the USA. So a lot of people would say that China is colonizing Africa once again. I don't have a problem with that. I really don't have a problem. I think if you can present such thoughts with facts and evidence, then there's something there, We know that China has been accused in a lot of instances as, loaning African countries that are not able to pay back. And then when they default on their loans, and these loans are in the form of, construction projects, building dams, building roads, building railway lines and railway and trains. And when these countries default and are unable to pay back, China has been accused as, taking over the resources of those countries, such as Zambia. But a lot of the people who point that out, they don't usually come with actual facts. It's just hearsay. They actually don't usually come with facts. And I'm not against that proposition. If there is such a thing, then it should be exposed. And we should always take China with a pinch of salt. And I think with every country, every sovereign nation in the world, whichever nation you're dealing with, you have to look out for your own interests. And African countries have often been bullied, especially by the West. But let's look at the relationship between Africa and China, man. If you're someone who likes to do research, you would know that Africa has had many, many amazing civilizations. Even before Nubia, even before Kemet. Back in the day, man, you see here in Southern Africa, there's a lot of lost civilization. Underground cities, stone settlements that have been built before Great Zimbabwe, before Mwene Mutapa, before Manyekeni ruins, before Bukoni ruins. Great, great, great empires that were built here in Southern Africa by our forefathers. You can see with what they call Adam's calendar in Mpumalanga, which forms part of all the circles that are there. Stone settlements. But then if you learn from the Kwekwena tribes, our people, the Kwekwena, which we are Kwekwena ourselves, Abatwa, Kakangu people, the Kham people, the Goringaikona people, the Gunukwa people, our people, Ete, Kizama people, people, if you hear their oral history, they will tell you that there's a lot of ancient ruins here in Southern Africa. So this is testament that there have been a lot of ancient civilizations. But now one starts to ask, Were these civilizations in isolation, or were they connected to other civilizations? And I will definitely answer that with 100% certainty. They were connected with other civilizations, and they actually produced other civilizations. So when you see Nubia and Kemet, which is ancient Egypt, you should know that those are actually colonies of Southern African and Central African civilizations. Southern Africa and Central Africa are the mother of everything, because we colonized the Nile region. We went and civilized that place. If you go and look at the Nakada culture and the builders of Napta Playa in ancient Egypt and Nubia, you realize those were hunter-gatherers, Hadzabe people, Kwe people, Twa people. Those were our people. They were us. The people who built ancient Kemet from the ground up, the founding fathers of Kemet. If you go and study the hieroglyphics of Egypt and look for the hieroglyph for the word face, I think the code is D2. Hieroglyph D2. Ghanaia's hieroglyph D2. You'll see it's a face of a Khoi person, or a face of a Bushman, or the face of so-called Xhosa, so-called Zulu. Anyone you like, indigenous Southern African and Central African people. Because Khoi are not South African. Khoi, you find them in Angola, in East Africa, or let me not say Khoi, let me say people who used to practice a hunter-gatherer lifestyle. Our ancestors, you know, they were great hunters, man. Yeah. They were great hunters. They used the bow. They were some of the best people to use the bow, both for hunting and for musical instruments. We were the inventors of the flute. We were the inventors of the harp. We invented the violin and the viola. You're telling me about viola and violin. We invented that nonsense. But all of that knowledge came from Southern and Central Africa, the Congo, Angola region, and the Southern South Africa, Zimbabwe region. All this information went north, not the other way around. Your Eurocentric researchers will have you believe that it's Egypt that civilized us. No, we civilized that region called the Nile region. We went there with our technology. Go and study Nakada culture, Naqada. Go and study the founding fathers of Napta Playa, the one of the ancient calendars in the world. After the Adam's calendar in Southern Africa, you realize that everything they have there, we invented it. Every single thing. Everything. But I want to get into that. What I want to get into is the idea that Africa was this dark continent with no civilizations. No. We are the founders of civilization. We civilized the whole world.
What happened, my brother?
Hey man, we fell. We fell because we assumed that everyone was like us. You see, if you go to the Philippines, the most ancient tribes are black tribes in the Philippines. If you go to Malaysia, the most ancient are black tribes. If you go to Australia, the most ancient are black tribes. If you go to India, the most ancient are the black tribes. If you go to the Americas, there's evidence there were black tribes there. Now they've been wiped out. If you do a DNA analysis of Latina people, you realize they have African DNA pre-slavery, before slavery. You see? So what happened is that we met people whom we assumed were like us. We shared our knowledge with people that we thought acted like we do, and they didn't, and they still don't even to this day. But we'll get to that story on another day, won't we now? But my point is, there were these great civilizations, seafarers, people who went around discovering lands, man, the great empire of Mali, the great empire of Mapungubwe, the great empire of Zata in Limpopo, the great empire of Bukoni in Mpumalanga, the great empire of the Kweneng ruins in Gauteng, the great empire of Mutapa, Angola Akilwanji in Angola, the Mutapa of Congo, Kingdom of Congo, Kingdom of Luba, the Buganda Kingdom, the Rundi Kingdom, which we call Burundi today, the great civilization of the Swahili people, all the way to the islands. These were great civilizations, all the way to the Middle East, man. The founding fathers of what we call the Middle East today, they were black tribes. There's evidence for this. But when you studied this, you realize that Africa was a great civilization. So now, it brings the question, did Africa have contact with China in ancient times? Did Africa have contact with Japan? Did Africa have contact with ancient India? Did we have contact with ancient Americas? And the answer is yes, and yes. Africans were in Europe long before Europeans knew about Africa. You listen to their myths and mythologies in Scotland, in Ireland, you realize, they had Twa people, they had hunter-gatherer people. The Moors ruled for about 700 years in those regions. Man, in the times of the Greek researcher and historian and philosopher Herodotus, he talks about Colchians who are black as black itself in the Caucasus Mountains. Caucasians, black people. In the BC era, man, not even AD. So who's telling me that Africans, they didn't know anything? In the BC era, they were in the Caucasus region, which is where the name Caucasian is derived. Don't tell me about Africa didn't know nothing. Africans knew everything, and they still do to this day. It's just that we've lost who we are. Anyway, there is evidence that China, India, Malaysia, and all those other regions, they had contact with Africa a long time ago. If you look across the sea on the eastern side, from Tanzania, Kenya, Somalia, all the way down to Eastern Cape, you will see Chinese pottery there, man. You'll see Chinese cups and plates and saucers and Chinese patterns from ancient time, 500, 600 years ago. And then you realize, we were trading with these people. Even before the Europeans knew about it. You'll see Indian culture. In fact, in Kenya, there's a village with children of Chinese men who survived the shipwreck. So when the Europeans started to come over through shipwrecks as well across the Indian Ocean, they did the same thing. They have children all over Southern Africa. In Eastern Cape, we have clans that are literally from Europeans. The Scotch clan, which come from the Scottish man William Sanders. The Mlungu clan, which come from survivors of a shipwreck. Mlungu meaning a white man. The Ngesi clan meaning the English people. You see, we have a lot of clans. The Gagla clan from the Gos people of Ireland. All these clans, they developed because these people were shipwrecked and they survived and they lived with our people. So there was contact with these ancient cultures. But China specifically, it was not just contact, but it was commerce. There was trade and there was commerce between Africa and China. Whether it's Somalia, whether it's Kenya, whether it's Azania. Azania meaning the region below Tanzania downwards. Because it's Tanganyika and Azania, which gives you Tanzania. So Azania was the region, literally the eastern coast of Africa. Tanzania downwards, that's Azania. And we traded with these people. We traded a lot with them. We gave them ivory. We gave them gold because we were a strong culture of gold mining. Gave them precious metals, bronze, silver, iron. Not just that, reeds to make mats, papyrus to make paper and all those kind of things. And we got other things in return that were, valuable at that time, silk, even cotton at times. But we had our own as well. You can go to West Africa, you see the Angara fabric. So there's always been contact between China and Africa from back in the day. Not just China, let me say Asia. So the idea now that Africans didn't know anything or they have no deal or no business trading with other countries equally is complete and utter garbage. Africa has always been a key player in the world. Even in India, a lot of captains and commanders were African people, even before slavery. You look at the pictures of the Buddha, those who believe in Buddhism, just look at the hairstyle, you realize that it looks quite familiar. Even the earrings, they look like East African people, like Nubians, like Sudanese, Ethiopian or Kenyan people. You start to see those parallels, and then you realize, when you look at the gods, even some of the Chinese gods are actually black. I'm like, what the hell is going on? So the idea that there was no contact between Africa and these places, and Africa at this stage can't trade with China equally is garbage, because we've done it before. Why not do it again? Let's look at Africa and Russia now. The Soviet Union, USSR. You know that areas such as Prussia, Georgia, the Caucasus Mountains, they fall under the Russian territory, including what's so-called Ukraine. Black people were there, man, hundreds of years, if not thousands of years ago. So what's this nonsense that now, no, we are Russia, we can't trust Russia. We don't have to trust Russia. But the idea that Africans were not there back in the day is garbage. The idea that this was a dark corner, that's what I'm against, man. We've always had contact with these people. Yes, history took a turn. A certain group of people took power and they decided to paint us as the monsters that we are seen as today. But I can assure you, man, a lot of white people don't hate Africans. Europeans don't hate Africans. It's envy. It's not hatred. It's envy. Why would you think a slave master wants to sleep with the slaves if they hate them? They don't hate them. They want to control them because they know if they can control them, then they can control the whole world. If you control black people, you control the entire world. Why is Russia and China fighting with the USA and Europe over Africa? Because anyone who controls the African continent controls the whole world, and specifically what they call sub-Saharan Africa. Let me say, where there's black people. If you control where there's black people, you control where there's a superpower in the world.
So do you think Russia and China have good intentions in this fight that they are engaging in with the USA?
Okay. So you need to understand geopolitical, the basis of geopolitical, business. They have to look out for their own interest first and foremost. I don't expect Russia and China to come and be Father Christmas. Father Christmas being some white bishop called Santa Claus, Saint Nicholas. But that's for another day. I do not expect Russia and China to come to Africa and hand out freebies. Anyone who expects that is a fool and a blind idiot. Because then whoever feeds you controls you. What Africa should fight for is their interests. South Africa should fight for South African interests. Or SADC, rather, should fight for SADC's interest. ECOWAS, which is the West African, regional economic zone, they should fight for their interests. The East African regional economic, zone, they should fight for their interests. All these three areas, West Africa, East Africa, and Southern Africa, form a bond and deal with China as such, because China is 1.4 billion strong, one country, and in Africa, that it takes the entire continent to match that. You see, but we have an advantage because we have the resources and we have the capital, the labor capital. We have the youngest population in the world, where the median age is 19 years old. In Asia, the median age is like 33 or something, and in South America is 33 or something. You see. So we have the youngest population, which means any country that needs people to work, they are most likely going to be majority Africans in the next 10 to 15 years. Do you understand what I mean? So we can use that to our advantage, that we have the labor force, we have the resources. You need these resources. You need this labor to establish yourself as a geopolitical influence. But that means you need us. So seeing that you need us, this is our demand. And this is what we promise to give you in return. Instead of being threatened with donations from the USA and from England, Africans must stop thinking about money, man, and rather think about sustainable solutions to their problems. What are the African problems? Job creation. Job creation is the main issue in Africa. How do you create jobs? By creating systems. And how do you begin creating systems? By building infrastructure. Both hardware and software infrastructure. So roads, railways, ships, trains, aeroplanes, you see, and those things need to be powered by software systems. So you build a strong IT network and a strong IT foundation by working with the best IT businesses. You have Samsung, you have Huawei. I'm just mentioning the Eastern alternatives. That's the software side. And then the hardware side, you build strong computerized systems. You work with countries that have a proven track record in this regard. So if Africans can begin with that, instead of thinking about donations, man, because they know a lot of these old people who are in power, they steal that money. So instead of thinking about donation and food parcels, they should think about building systems, long-term systems. China seems to be promising to help with these systems. But then now the deal should not be decided by China. It should be decided by Africa, because it's Africa that's got the resources. It's us who have the lithium. It's us who have the cobalt. It's us who has the gold. It is us who have the diamond. Do you understand? It is us who have all these vibranium type of resources and the labor to do that. Now, what we ought to do is to come to the table as equals instead of begging for food parcels, begging for loans and all that. No, you shouldn't want loans, but build something long term. It may come in the form of debt. That's not a problem. Debt can be leveraged. You can utilize debt to build something long term. But I think if African leaders can come with that understanding, just like we used to back in the day when we traded with India and China. India didn't come here and colonize us. They traded with us, man. In fact, you had black people having prominent positions in India, and you didn't have it the other way around. Do you understand? That's how influential we were. You had black people in Japan who had influential positions, in China, in Russia, yes. We had black people in Russia who were influential, in Europe. We were the ones who were exporting talent to the world.
We still do.
We still do, actually, in a very unfair deal at this stage, though, because we are dying here. At that time, we had We had abundance here, such that it overflowed to the world. Now it's the opposite. The world takes from us the best of us. They take the best of us, the smartest, the brightest, everything.
Everything that's good.
Everything that's good, they take it.